The grooves on your sand wedge are smoother than the glass of your car windshield, and you have no idea. You have probably replaced your driver twice since the last time you checked those grooves, and that quiet math is costing you strokes every single round. The wedge you trust most, the one you reach for inside 100 yards, is likely the most neglected club in your bag. This is a channel about the underground economics of golf, the fees and markups and tiny engineering decisions that drain your wallet and inflate your score without you ever noticing. Today, we are pulling apart the senior wedge, the supposedly forgiving club that manufacturers market directly to your slower swing speed and your fear of losing distance. And here is the promise that will carry this whole video. Your wedge problem is not a swing problem, and it is not an age problem. It is a groove wear problem and a bounce angle problem, and both of them are quietly engineered into the price tag you already paid. Most senior golfers play wedges for 10 years or more while replacing drivers every 3, and that single habit is costing you more strokes than any equipment decision you will make this season. The fix costs almost nothing. The ignorance costs you every weekend. Walk with me through the bag of a golfer who loves this game but stopped paying attention to the clubs that matter most. The driver gets the glory and the new shaft and the yearly trade-in, while the sand wedge sits in the same slot it has occupied since the previous administration. You can feel the wear when you run a fingernail across the face, but you have never once thought to check. The common assumption is that wedges are simple tools, forged chunks of metal that either work or do not, and that age barely affects them. That assumption is the first leak in the system. The truth is that the face of a wedge is a precision instrument designed to grab the ball and rip spin into it, and every single groove is a tiny engineered channel doing specific work. If you are just now realizing your wedge faces are a ticking clock, you are already inside the pattern. Subscribe and stay with us, because the next club in the bag is even more quietly engineered to empty your wallet. In the comments, drop the number of seasons you have owned your current sand wedge. If you honestly cannot remember, just type the word vintage. When those channels wear smooth, the ball stops checking and starts rolling, and you blame your hands, your tempo, your aging body. The manufacturer knows exactly what happens to that face, and they are counting on you never looking at it closely enough to notice. Independent equipment data has tracked what happens to spin rates as grooves wear down, and the numbers are uncomfortable. After roughly 75 to 100 rounds, the spin rate on a wedge can drop by 20 to 30%, and you cannot see that decay with your eyes. From 100 yards out, a worn wedge can roll 8 to 12 feet further than a fresh one. 8 feet on the green is the difference between a birdie look and a two-putt pair, between getting up and down and walking off with a bogey. And here is the part most people miss. Because the decline is gradual, your brain adjusts to it and you never feel the moment your wedge stopped doing its job. The research on golf equipment and performance under real conditions keeps confirming that players change their movement patterns based on the constraints of the club in their hands. A wedge with no spin changes your swing without you realizing it, because your body compensates for the ball rolling out, reaching, steering, losing rhythm. You are not playing worse because you are older. You are playing worse because your tool is worn out. Now, here is where the financial engineering gets clever, because the industry has a second trap waiting right behind the first one. Even the senior golfers who do decide to replace their wedges almost always buy the wrong bounce angle, and they buy it because nobody ever explained what bounce actually does. The average senior golfer swings an 8-iron somewhere between 65 and 80 miles per hour, and that slower, often steeper attack angle needs more bounce, not less. Bounce is the angle of the leading edge relative to the sole, and it determines how the club digs or glides through the turf. The guidance from senior-specific equipment sources is consistent. Many slower swing players benefit from more bounce and a wider sole to reduce digging. But the retail rack is stocked with low-bounce tour-inspired wedges because those look sleek and get placed at eye level. And the senior golfer buys the club that looks right instead of the one that works right. A steep attack angle with a low bounce wedge digs into the turf. The leading edge catches, the shot comes out thin or fat, and you walk off thinking you hit a bad chip. The The club was wrong for your swing before you ever took the club back. The club was wrong before you ever took it back, yet you walked off blaming the swing. Subscribe so you never step into a fitting or a retail aisle missing the one spec that decides whether you save strokes or burn them. In the comments, write dead money. What you just heard is the surface. The Dead Money Golf ebook goes 7 levels deeper. Every mechanism, every markup, every number fully sourced. 120 pages of what we can't post here. Plus the vault, 5 private video investigations that exist nowhere else. Link in the description and pinned comment. Consider what the companies are actually doing here, because this is the forgotten principle that ties the whole system together. They segment the market by age and fear. They attach a label to a club that says senior. They soften the shaft slightly, and they charge a premium for the badge. The same technology that exists in a standard wedge, the same forging, the same groove-cutting process, gets repackaged with a demographic name and a higher price. The wedge you bought to save strokes is engineered to drain your wallet while adding nothing to your score, because the real variable, the groove condition and the bounce angle, is the one thing nobody markets to you. They sell you confidence in the box, and what you actually need is a 5-minute evaluation of the club already in your hand. Here is the quiet math that should change how you look at your bag. You paid somewhere around $150 for that sand wedge, and you have owned it for 10 years. That is $15 a year for a tool that has cost you countless shots for at least the last 5 of those years. A new wedge, fitted for your actual swing and bounce needs, costs the same $150. Re-grooving your existing wedge costs around $15 from a professional shop. And yet most senior golfers will do neither, because nobody has ever told them that the problem is not their hands and that they are not simply getting older and worse. I want you to picture the last time you stood over a delicate chip with your trusted wedge, the one you have had since before your grandkids started school. You felt that quiet anxiety, that slight tension in the wrists, wondering whether the ball would bite or run past the hole. The club did not deliver what the price tag promised, and you never once suspected the club itself. Here is what the evidence actually shows, and it flips the whole narrative on its head. Golf performance is affected by task constraints and club selection context, which is a formal way of saying the club in your hands changes the outcome before your swing even starts. You are not the problem here. You were set up to be the problem. The Tour Spec wedge with the aggressive sole design that works for a 25-year-old with a 100-mile-an-hour swing is actively working against you, and the industry happily sells it to you anyway. They do not ask about your attack angle at the rack, they ask for your credit card. The counter principle is almost suspiciously simple. Ignore the demographic label entirely and buy based on 3 measurements. First, the loft gap between your pitching wedge and your sand wedge, which should be a consistent 8 to 12 degrees. Second, the bounce angle, which for a slower swing speed and steeper attack should lean higher, toward 12 to 14 degrees. Third, the condition of the grooves, which you can check with a simple fingerprint test on the face of the club. Spend 20 minutes at a club fitter hitting your existing wedge against a fresh one, and the difference will show up in the rollout distance before you even look at the numbers on the screen. The experts are consistent on this point. The right wedge combination can save strokes inside 100 yards, and the wrong one, regardless of what it says on the sole, will cost you strokes every time you pull it. A senior-specific label is not a performance guarantee. It is a market segment. Now, here is the part that ties the whole system together, the sting in the tail of this financial trap. Even knowing all of this, most senior golfers will still go out and buy the new wedge with the familiar name and the comfortable marketing, because the habit of trusting the brand is stronger than the habit of checking the grooves. The companies have built their pricing structure on that exact behavioral pattern. That behavioral pattern is the engine behind a $100 premium on a wedge that performs identically to one pulled from a used bin. Subscribe so the next time a golf brand hands you a label instead of a loft gap, you know exactly what they are really selling. In the comments, write dead money. What you just heard is the surface. The Dead Money Golf ebook goes 7 levels deeper. Every mechanism, every markup, every number fully sourced. 120 pages of what we can't post here. Plus the vault, 5 private video investigations that exist nowhere else. Link in the description and pinned comment. If you have stood over a chip with a $150 wedge and still felt that quiet anxiety about the shot, you know the club did not deliver what the price tag promised. That is not weakness. That is the invisible decay of a tool you were never taught to inspect. The transformation path is 3 rules that will make you the smart spender at your club. The first rule is to check your grooves today with nothing more than a fingernail and 5 seconds of attention. The second rule is to get fitted for bounce based on your actual attack angle, rather than buying whatever is glossy at eye level. The third rule is to stop believing that a senior-specific model is engineered differently enough to justify the premium, because the real gains live in the shaft flex and the bounce angle, which any competent fitter can set up for the same price as an off-the-rack club. The system was never about making you play better. It was about extracting the maximum willingness to pay from a demographic that fears losing its game. Every marketing dollar spent on that fear is a dollar you are expected to repay at the register. Here is the final image I want to leave you with, a small and concrete one. Picture the face of your sand wedge right now, the club that has lived in your bag through a decade of rounds and practice sessions and bad lies. Now picture a fresh one next to it, the grooves sharp and precise, ready to bite. The difference between those two clubs is the difference between the round you have been playing and the round you are capable of playing, and it has nothing to do with your age or your swing. In the next chapter, we are going to expose the premium ball trap for senior golfers, why the ball you are playing is adding strokes and costing you $30 a dozen. For now, the question that should pull at you as you head to the course this weekend. How old are your current wedges in years, and how many rounds have those grooves survived? That number is the exact measure of what this system has been quietly taking from you every single weekend without you ever once noticing.